Dame Julie Andrews has addressed whether she'll be making an appearance in the Princess Diaries 3.
And she won't. She's not going to do it. She has indicated. Yeah, in fact, the biggest story here is she's pretty much said, "I'm retired from film acting." She's not going to do it again. Now, if you even hark back maybe 10 years ago to Mary Poppins Returns, it was pretty clear there was a role there that was written for her, and she didn't take it up. So a lot of actors say, "Oh, I'm retired." Then, of course, the phone rings, and they're suddenly not retired anymore. But in the case of Dame Julie, I think she means it. Not to say for 1 second she's at 90 sitting in a rocking chair and doing nothing. She's not. She's still writing the books with her daughter Emma. She's still available for voiceover work. It seems she just doesn't want to leave the house. And, you know, you look at these classic movies like The Sound of Music and Mary Poppins, those producers would have offered her a mint. They would have let her film it at home. Could have been a little cameo thing where Anne Hathaway rings for advice or something. Didn't even want to do that. So very classy to say, no, I'm not doing that. That part of my life is now over.
Look at you contributing to story and budget.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
It'll cost us $1 million. We'll write her in this way. All right, good stuff. Thank you, Pete. We're back to you again very